how do we grow what sometimes is just a coal left of self-worth? Like it's still there, but it might just be really small. And how is it that we can sit with that part of ourselves and feed that part of ourselves so it's much stronger and more organic from the inside out? Because everything here, we're leveraging our self-worth on the outside.
Yeah. So again, like just starting to check in with yourself can be really helpful. I say to new clients, like just being able to set a timer, do it easy. Like don't be overwhelming to yourself, right? Like set a timer for 5 times a day and to check in with yourself emotionally, physically, spiritually, relationally. Get a feeling wheel. Like just start getting curious, right? That's the first step. Just getting curious about what is going on. And then from there, we're able to start recognizing what is happening in our thought and we can get deeper in that. So I think just really being patient with yourself is self-compassion is a huge factor in our healing journey. We have to be soft with ourselves.
Man, oh man, are you in for a treat today? Abigail is here to walk us through the connection between core beliefs, attachment wounds, and shame shadows. What I found incredibly interesting is that there are 6 shame shadows. When you add 2 of them together, it is iconic of an addictive or addict personality. And when you add a different 2 of these shame shadows together, it is almost always associated with imposter syndrome. Abigail is a straight shooter and podcast host of Judgment Free Zone. She is a real talk kind of gal with lived experience to back up her work. This is where you will want to get out pen and paper and take some notes. I am your host, Rebecca Molman, trauma therapist turned podcaster and coach. Welcome to the Reframe, where fear is brave. Here, you will learn tools, techniques, and strategies to get back in the driver's seat of your own life. There is so much to dive in today. Don't forget to grab that pen and paper and let's go. Well, Abigail, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here today. And I'm super excited about today's conversation. And you've had so much interesting content around decoding shame shadows, attachment wounds, and core beliefs and being able to fit them all together. That's a lot to cover. And I look forward to just hearing a little bit more about that. But before we get started, could you share just a little bit about yourself and your own history that has gotten you to where you're an expert in this area?
I mean, I think, our greatest strengths are our greatest weakness as well. And I have a lot of shame. So I work with shame. I think that something that a lot of people don't really know the difference of right away is the difference between guilt and shame. And so I did not understand that concept. It's so intertwined in society. And just to point out for people that the difference is guilt is I made a mistake and shame is I am a mistake. And so I didn't get that. And I felt like I was a mistake. So growing up in a really neglectful home and just going into an emotionally abusive, physically abusive with domestic violence, and then moving on into my adulthood in that too, there was a point where I had to choose, right? I feel like we all get that choice. We get to either see what happened in our past and let it define us, or we get to look at it straight on and go head on like a buffalo and move through it. So that's kind of my past and my story. I'm a mom of 4 and I have twins and we're a blended family. And yeah, that's me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, can you just tell us a little bit about the shame shadows and what makes up the shame shadows to give the listeners a little bit of an idea?
Yeah. So the shame shadows is really great because it's helping us realize that it's not a piece of us. So it's giving us a name to something so we can clarify, oh, this isn't me. So there's 6 shame shadows. There's the judge, the politician, the impotent one, the royal, the martyr, and the rebel. And so basically, if I'm able to start identifying which shame shadow is talking and realizing this isn't me, I'm able to detach it and see, oh, this is talking, what's happening, and be able to figure out what I need. So the judge demands perfection. So basically, all of these, by the way, I just want to say they're all appraising our worth constantly. So that's what they're doing all the time. They're just appraising our worth. So the judge is very like should, shouldn't, demanding perfection, you're not enough, and all your flaws and defects. So the judge is usually folding hand in hand with a lot of them. We can easily usually find out when that perfection is coming into our lives. So the politician is if I can earn points for somebody to like us. Like, the mom that feels like they have to bring in the cookies for the kid, right? Or even you and I here, right? If I needed to feel like I needed to look perfect so that you liked me or make sure that I'm saying the right thing. So it's also demands perfection and needing to feel like I'm put together. So you can hear the judge come in with that politician holding hands. The impotent one is like Eeyore. So it's very much like, why bother? This will never change. This is just how it is. This is just how it's gonna be. Like nothing's ever gonna change, right? And then the royal is very deserving. It's putting ourselves above others, like very demanding respect. Like I'm better than everybody else. Like if, for example, I deserve to be on this podcast, right? Like I know better than all. Like, no, you know what I mean? Like that's what it would be. Very judgmental towards others. Then the murder is like rabbit on like Winnie the Pooh, like very, you know, sacrifice yourself for the greater good, like give all of yourself to make everybody happy with you. And then you could become very passive aggressive, right? So that's the martyr. And then the rebel is like the rules don't apply to me. So F everybody, F you. Like you can hear the royal and the rebel are very addict behavior. So they very much, like I do what I want. I don't care who gets hurt in the process. I'm going to do whatever I need for me. Right.
Hmm.
So you can hear that. So those are the shame shadows. So when I'm able, for me, I have a very high judge. And of course, like these will come in and out, right? Like I'm trying to think of an example real quick of what's happened recently. I was with a client yesterday, right? And her husband walked in on us in our session and she immediately was annoyed and like, I deserve respect, right? So you could hear that royal immediately come out, right? But really underneath it, so that's how we go into the pain, right? So whether it's anger, fear, or sadness, what was that core belief and wound that just got hit for you? So we noticed the royal came out. That was the shame shadow. But the belief is that I'm not important, right? So that's where these core beliefs come in. I'm not being heard. I'm not enough. And that hit my attachment wound, which is rejection or betrayal or abuse or loss or abandonment. So those are the wounds. So then when we're able to see, oh, this happened, these are the shadows coming out. What is the core belief that got hit? My attachment wound. Then I can figure out what I need and how to move forward.
Mm.
So I can see these shame shadows were trying to protect me from something in my past, right? So they're
Mhm.
coming out because this was a coping mechanism for myself. So when I can see them, separate it from me, how far away is that royal from me right now? Like, oh, it's in my body. It feels like it's in my body, in my face. I want to like explode on my husband. Okay, that's not me. Why do I feel that way? Because I don't feel important, because my rejection wound is coming up. So what do I need? Well, I need to really show up for me and not reject myself. What I need is to feel accepted and to feel assured that you can show up for me. Okay, well, can he show up for you? Because is he showing a pattern he can't? So how do I still get my need met? How do I still not reject me? And that's how we move forward.
I love how you connected all of those. It seems like the shame shadows are protectors. I think maybe that's how I have conceptualized it is they're doing their job to protect the wounded part in ourselves. But I think where we get into trouble is we we aren't taught how to dig deeper and figure out why we're acting that way because those shame shadows or those protectors become such a ingrained fabric of how we operate because they probably were developed in childhood, don't you think?
I mean, yeah, of course, a lot of the time, right? Unless you have like a
Yeah.
big PTSD trauma that
Yeah.
happened now, which would make sense. But yeah, these wounds, these attachment wounds that happen are definitely usually in early childhood, right? Like in these
Mhm.
core beliefs that happen around us. And the core beliefs, do you mind if I start going into
Yeah, go for it.
Yes. So the core beliefs, there I have three genres of the core beliefs is I am, trust section, and then the powerless section. So I am is, I am defective. I'm not enough. Um, I'm broken. I'm not important. I don't matter. The trust is I can't trust myself or I can't trust others. Like the world is bad.
Mhm.
And then powerlessness is I can't, there's no control. There's nothing I can do. This is just how it's going to be. So when I have these, and if I have all three, it can be super debilitating to do anything when I feel like I'm not enough. I can't trust myself or I can't trust others. And then there's nothing I can do about it. And so how can we see that when I was, a kid and I got these wounds because when my teacher told me I couldn't do anything or I wasn't good, or my parent told me or neglected me because we're so egocentric and we take it on as self. We take it on as I did something wrong. This must be me. And so then these shame shadows come in to protect us and to fight for us. And so as again, when we get older, like I said, we have to look at it and choose, okay, I see you royal. I see you're trying to protect me from this pain. Thank you, but I don't need you anymore. I can get my own needs met. And how am I going to do that?
I like that you're objectifying these different aspects because it takes it outside. It actually gives you a little space from the shame piece and takes it outside of yourself into an archetype and almost opens this space up for you to be able to have a conversation and relationship with that side of yourself.
And that's what I do. Literally in my one-on-ones, we sit down and we'll identify what shadow is coming up with you. And we start like, so for example, I'll say, if I was to hear it if we were in a room, like a sound room, what would it sound like? Is it a male voice or a female voice, right? Because a lot of times we want to say it's my mom, right? Or my dad. No, no, no. It's not. What does it sound like? It sounds like a high pitched woman shaking your finger at me. Okay, how close is it to you? Where is it in the room? And then we'll start. There's sometimes where they're all showing up. So, literally in my groups, we will have each person play a role for you and you will address each one and how
What
they sound.
what do you mean play a role? Could you give an example of that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little bit more of it tips its toe in like psychodrama, right? A little bit.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, they would ask another person in the room to play their impotent one. And then they would ask another person to play their royal or ask another person to play their judge. And I would literally have them all start talking to them and hear what the messages are happening and be able to face them and say what their truth is and what they need and be able to say, I see you, thank you. So much research shows that when we just reject it, like that's not going to be helpful. When I can thank it and see that there was this piece of me that was helping me as a child when no one else was showing up, like that's completely fair and valid. So I see you, thank you for what you did. And that can bring so much peace because it's showing your control too. Again, like showing that you really do matter and that you can show up for yourself and that you are worthy of getting your needs met by yourself and others. Because when we think that we deserve, again, like that royal, it's so hard to relate to people because then if I think that when we say the word deserve, like why? Like, why? I don't like the word deserve. Like, we are all worthy. We're worthy of love and belonging. We don't deserve love and belonging. We are worthy of it because we breathe and live on this earth. And
Mm.
when we realize that we're worthy, well, that gives so much more space to know that you are too.
And that breaking down, I think that's what you started with too, is that this is all about self-worth. And when it's like we come into this world fully that's a full bucket for us. And then as situations happen, intentionally or not, even not intentionally, then because of that egocentric aspect, it starts to diminish and pull away some of that self-worth. How can you help people to pivot towards that part of themselves that feels like it has holes in it, and which is where all these other coping mechanisms are coming from and informed by the maladaptive beliefs. But how do you get them to pivot towards a sense of genuine, authentic worthiness?
I mean, again, it just takes time and repetition, right? Like just even starting to notice, something that I first do every time when we start with my one-on-ones or my clients in group, or check-ins, we're checking in physically, spiritually, emotionally, and relationally. And again, I think as a society, we so much can go, oh, I'm feeling this for the whole month or the whole year. It's been a bad week. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean it's been a bad week? Like, how are you feeling in this moment? But we so often aren't like feeling what's happening in ourselves right now. So, how am I feeling emotionally right now? Well, I could feel a lot of things. And that's something I didn't realize too when I started is that there could be many emotions right in this moment and it can change right in a second. And so, when we're able to see, oh, feelings are temporary, I can start to connect with that. I can move through them easily and connect with that. And then see, did that answer your question? I feel
Yeah.
like I went off on a tangent there.
Yeah, I think there's a process to it, but then there's also the integration. So feeding that part of yourself that's on the inside that has been reduced because of life experiences. And I think I'm also asking for myself and just another way to conceptualize it for my clients as well. But how do we grow what sometimes is just a coal left of self-worth? Like it's still there, but it might just be really small. And how is it that we can sit with that part of ourselves and feed that part of ourselves so it's much stronger and more organic from the inside out? Because everything here, we're leveraging our self worth on the outside.
Yeah. So, okay. So, again, like just starting to check in with yourself can be really helpful. I say to new clients, like just being able to set a timer, do it easy. Like, don't be overwhelming to yourself, right? Like, set a timer for 5 times a day and to check in with yourself emotionally, physically, spiritually, relationally. Get a feeling wheel. Like, just start getting curious, right? That's the first step. Just getting curious about what is going on. And then from there, we're able to start recognizing what is happening in our thoughts and we can get deeper in that. So I think just really being patient with yourself is a self compassion is a huge factor in our healing journey. We have to be soft with ourselves. Something that an old therapist of mine said that I will take forever is you don't know what you don't know. So that just always hits with me. Like again, we're constantly learning. We have to be soft. We have to be soft with our thoughts and our actions. And, we're going to mess up. We're going to take 10 steps forward and 20 steps back. And that's okay because you don't know what you don't know. You're learning and be soft with yourself.
I love that you work with people very specifically with this because we are so close to our own programming and our own patterns that a lot of times we don't see all of the aspects that are playing into it. And there's something within healing with trauma work is healing oftentimes comes with in relationship because it is in relationship that the trauma happened or the disconnection happened. So within the context of someone holding space for you to be able to, a safe space for you to be able to have the courage to go into that programming that hurt so bad as a little kid. And it really feels that same way as an adult.
Absolutely. I like, don't get me wrong. I love one-on-ones, but group is like magic. It really is. I love groups. And they say research also shows that you're more likely to have change being in a group with people because you're not only being accountable to yourself now, you're accountable to a group, right? And so there's that, again, that we're built for community, we're built for connection. So when I'm able to call out my shame, because you can't have empathy when you're in shame. So when I'm able to sit in a space and start building these connections and share my shame, I'm able to see other people doing it, which helps ignite me to do it, which is creating self-compassion for them, which is creating self-compassion for me. And it's beautiful. is beautiful. I love that. I mean, I was in a group
Mhm.
myself. That's how I started my healing journey, was in a group of women. And crazy enough, I have a woman in my group who's literally my best friend 7 years later from that group. And I actually told her that I didn't think we could be friends. It wasn't my royal out. It was like, you know what? Like, we could be in this group together, but like, we have nothing in common.
We're we're not gonna jive.
Yeah, and now she's literally my kids think she's her aunt. Like, they
Wow.
love her. She's my person. And so I am so thankful that she didn't allow my royal to affect us getting close. And she accepted me for me and where I was at.
That's incredible. Yeah, the power of groups is certainly profound.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think that's one of the things, those attachment wounds, when we have experiences like that, that is taken away, is our voice. When we get and we attach shame to it, we get small and we isolate and we hide. And if you think about doing that since a little kid, then being able to reclaim your voice, and not only that, what your voice says. Am I able to step into myself in a way of I think it's proclamation of being able to, like, no, I am strong. I am powerful. I am loving. I am love. And using that power, or reclaiming that power of the voice back within the context of another individual or community.
Yeah. And that's what, then, we work, of course, on affirmations as well, like in our groups. Something that I like to add on to affirmations is, I might not believe it now. I hope that I will believe it someday, fill in the blank, whatever that is. Because again, that could put us back into shame or anxiety, depending on what we're feeling like. If I'm saying in the mirror to myself every day, I am enough, and I don't feel it, well, I'm going to create, my shame shadows are going to be up. Oh my gosh, my judge, I'm not doing it perfect, right? Like,
Mhm.
something's wrong with me because I don't feel it. No, nothing's wrong with you. Just
But it's
have
hard
to
to
say it.
absorb. It's
Oh,
hard
yeah.
to let your body absorb it.
Yeah, because we're so hard on ourselves. And how often do we sit alone with ourselves? What are we afraid of? Right? I know for me, I was afraid of what was going to show. Was I even going to really like myself
Mhm.
sitting alone with me? Right? Then I'm really facing my rejection wound, because that's my big one. My biggest wound is rejection.
Can you talk a little bit more about that process? I think you just landed on something that's a very common fear of accepting the fear of, am I even going to like myself?
Yeah. I mean, when we have these, again, when we're a kid and somebody's been telling us, right? And we go back to thinking that we're not enough. Well, of course, I'm going to be afraid of sitting quietly with myself and getting to know me. Well, what do I really like? What what do I really believe in? Right? Not what society's pushing on me, not what the internet's pushing on me. It's really interesting about the anxieties when we're able to just go to self, it's small, right? But how often are we doing that? Right? And then you bring in the home. Okay. So there's different things that come in and factors that come into the home. And then you bring in, school or work, whatever it is. Then you bring in your city and then the world, like, oh my gosh, like these things become huge and we don't even know where we were.
Mm.
If we could just get back to self and, focus on our 3-foot worlds and who we are and center ourselves. I mean, how often do people sit 10 minutes a day in quiet? Like, not working out, not journaling, like not not even that. Like, not reading, like just sit quietly.
That's a hard one.
I mean, people get even uncomfortable with the pauses, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, get curious, what's coming up? Why is this why is this pause between friends? What is coming up for me that I feel like I need to fill the space or fill the space with me?
Just following you and like leaning into it myself, I can feel the protectors or shame shadows. I could feel them like bubble up
Mm.
just in that little bit of a space. It's like, okay, what would be there in this moment? You know?
So what were you telling yourself?
I think I am not sure I was more observing, but I think it goes back to, am I doing this because we're on video, right? And I think
Right.
everybody, it's the craziest thing. I'll record a podcast, I'll stop recording, and the conversation after I hit stop record is some of the most brutal. I wish it had been on record because there is a part of us that is bracing and reserved and a little bit less authentic, I think, for most people. And being vulnerable brings up, I think it's a vulnerability. Am I doing this right? Am I stuttering on my words? That kind of stuff.
So with shame shadow, do you remember?
Hold on.
Politician that I need to be seen as put together. I can earn
Mm.
points for people to like me,
That with the judge, probably.
demanding perfection, right? So I got to be
Yeah.
perfect. I got to do it right, right? Which the judge and the politician just bring in imposter syndrome right up.
Oh, because you said before the rebel and the royal were more attributed to behaviors of addicts.
Yep.
So when you put the judge and the politician together, that's more iconic of the imposter syndrome.
Yep.
Huh. Of course it is.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because you got to be perfect and you can earn points by being perfect. If I can make enough changes of your value to improve, like I could be perfect enough.
Can you walk it backwards then? So if
How
that comes, like, just use me as an example. So if that came up for me in that moment with that pause, then how would you coach somebody so the listeners can see your process? Because I think the
I
process
just
that you're,
did. I said, what story did you tell yourself? I did. I started coaching you
oh,
right away. I said, what story did you tell yourself? And then I said, did you hear the shame shadow?
oh, okay.
And then we started calling out and you were able to dialect with me, right? Because we're just getting good at asking questions. I don't know what's coming up for you. I can kind of try to pinpoint things. I heard the
Mm,
politician and then you clarified for me, yes, that and the judge. And we
got it.
started walking through it. And so then now we can go, okay, we see your judge, we see your politician. Okay, what's the truth? What choices do you have? And we're giving you your power back.
Hmm.
I mean, we could go lots of different ways, right? Like we could do walk through a meditation. I could sit with you again and we could address your politician and judge, right? We can see what's coming up. We could go into the attachment wounds for you. We could figure out what core belief is coming up. I mean, we could go so many
Mm.
ways just by seeing that it was your judge and politician that came up.
So
How
you're
long?
you're
Sorry.
using that as like a spotlight.
I mean, yes, in this instance I am, but sometimes it's different, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes I don't even need to go to the shame shadows. Right now I'm doing what's called a mindset shift Wednesday, where I'm having business women come on to my Instagram live and we're starting with a core belief. So I don't even go into the shame shadows with them.
Mm.
I just tell them, okay, you want to start with a core belief and they'll start somewhere and then we'll get really deep in, 10 minutes, we can figure out what's really happening there. And then we go with that, so we can go
That's
lots of different ways.
How do you work with people to replace those like, so the belief systems, right? The I'm not worthy or I'm not enough. How can people work with, you said repeating affirmations. Are there any other ways that people can start to reprogram
Yeah.
the, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do a pretty intense packet of going through some like foundational things for yourself to basically get to a point of what we call the dailies. So, your dailies, again, is connecting with that emotional, spiritual, relational, physical piece. So, we go to that, and your dailies, you pick something to do every day in those areas. So, I encourage you again, go small, pick something in those areas that are, you know, 15 minutes a day. Like, do not make it more complicated for yourself because what it's doing is, again, if we have that belief that we can't trust ourselves, or we have that wound that we reject ourselves or betray ourselves, right? Because ultimately that's what it is it ourselves. We have a betrayal wound, but it's us. So if I can do these things, I'm learning to trust myself slowly because I'm going to show up. So if I have, emotionally, I'm going to I am going to meditate quietly for 1 minute a day. Again, do not overcomplicate it because then we create shame. Seriously. Like, we don't need to be hard on ourselves. Like, 1 minute a day, I'm going to sit quietly and I'm going to even set a timer because this is super uncomfortable for me. And that's okay. Give ourselves some self compassion, right? Relationally, I'm going to make a phone call to a friend and I only have 5 minutes. So when I get on the call, I'm going to be, hey, I only have 5 minutes, right? Because we're starting to show up for ourselves, guys. We're going to say, I only have 5 minutes. We're not going to feel bad about it. Or physically, okay, like what? I'm going to take a nap when I need a nap this week, right? And I'm not going to feel bad about it. Spiritually, okay, that could look so broad. That could be meditation. That could be reading a book that you need to around spirituality. That could be sitting in nature. Like, again, it could be so many things, but that's a great reason why a therapist or a life coach or a mentor can be so helpful because, again, when we're in the box and we don't know what we don't know, it can be so hard to see these things, the options that we have, right? We have to create new pathways and realize that there's things that we can do to take your own power back. It's okay to need help. It's okay not to know.
100%. Well said. Very well said.
I
Very
mean,
well
I
said.
have a therapist too, right? Like,
I think we get caught in the idea that I have to do all the things all the time, or like to run the marathon. To run the marathon, you have to be able to do the smaller trainings in between. But more often than not, our brains go, like if you go back to the gym, you try to go do the same workout you did 6 months ago when you left the gym that you had been working out for 3 months. Well, no, that's not realistic. I like that you making it bite size.
yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, we're so in our society, so like instant gratification, but it's creating so much shame because why are we not at this point? Why am I not doing this? Why did I not be able to achieve what I wanted to achieve? Like, we're so hard on ourselves. Like, no wonder you're not achieving what you're achieving.
Well, if the opposite of shame is empathy, could you talk just a little bit about the qualities of what empathy looks like?
Yeah, I mean, it's being able I think it's so important to be able we can't have that empathy until we're able to have that self-compassion, right? Because then I
Mhm.
can't hold space for that. If I again, if these shadows are coming up and I feel like I need to be perfect and when your imposter syndrome just came up, for example,
Mhm.
if my imposter syndrome was coming up, I couldn't sit here with you because I would be feeling also that I need to be perfect. But because I, in this space, have worked on it so much, I'm able to go, I can relate to you. And that's empathy, that I can relate that feeling of needing to be perfect and show up and afraid what I'm going to look like on a video.
Mhm.
And that, yeah, I have that thought of like, oh, wow, there is that connection piece being on a video, right? Like that's why you and I are doing it right now together, even while only people are going to hear it, is because you and I are able to connect. So when I'm able to say, oh, yeah, I can totally relate to that. What do you need? Right? So many people want to give their opinion. Most of the time, we do not want,
Nor is it helpful.
right? But that's the empathy piece. Sitting in a space of not having to fix it and being able to just sit with you in it.
So practicing, like what you were talking about, just sitting in your own body quietly for that 10 minutes or that 1 minute builds the skill to be able to then sit with other people in an empathetic way rather than let me try to fix it because I'm uncomfortable with your uncomfortability. You're making me uncomfortable over there. Stop being upset or depressed or angry.
Right. Well, because again, it's all about self. What's when I'm able to start doing that, I'm able to start getting curious about, oh, that's weird. You just said that. And I felt what? Because they're over there feeling something, but it really has nothing to do with me either. Right.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen National Treasure?
No, uh-uh.
Okay. Well, you know, like the Benjamin Franklin glasses, right? Or is that
Yeah.
Thomas
Yeah.
Jefferson? One of them, right? Yeah. The like spectacles that have like different colors
Mhm.
go up. Okay, that's our core beliefs, right? Or our attachment wounds. We have these things that change colors and they're shifting, and you click one open and it looks green, but then you click one down and it looks blue, right? So as I have these core beliefs coming up, when your imposter syndrome came up, so then I go, oh, whoa, did I do something wrong? Did I not say it perfect? Right? My politician's coming up. But if I'm able to sit and go, oh, I just noticed that I felt like I needed to do this. Like, what happened there? And I can say that to you, right? Like, oh, I noticed when you said this, something came up for me too. Right. And we're able to have this conversation rather than start attacking, right? Which just like, creates this whole cycle of you're in your stuff, I'm in my stuff, and now we're all in our stuff.
Mhm.
And then
There's some
again in shame and not in it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also something about projection where when your stuff comes up and projecting it out onto the world and like you're a mom, I'm a mom, and I wonder how with you working with this and being really aware on a daily basis, how have you seen that play out with the kiddos?
Oh gosh. It is really hard not to be like, your royal is out all the time. But again, they're egocentric, right? It's all about self. So when I realize, like, you know what I mean? Like, right. But I don't need to call it out. I just, I work through things with them, like, oh, what's coming up for you? Well, man, and my sister took my toy. Okay, what do you need? Right? It's really hard to not get in the middle, man, as a parent and realize that, like, I'm not a coach as a parent. I'm a referee. Like, I'm like, okay, what do you need? What do you need? Like,
Yeah,
being able, but
totally.
again, how can I sit in that if all of my own shit is coming up all the time?
Well, and kids have a tendency to trigger your stuff. Real
Wait,
like in a way that nobody else can. They're really good at it.
a tendency they do that. It like you have a kid, they are gonna bring out all of your stuff. I don't know why anybody ever said having a kid would be helpful, like in a hard marriage. You know what I mean? I feel like that's what I grew up hearing. Like, no, 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 no way. Not a good idea. Don't do it. They lied to you.
I think statistics even show that full support of that. It's one of the
Yeah.
hardest things that a marriage can go through as a child.
Yep. And I've read too that I think it's like, I mean, it's only 1%, but I think 1 to 3% end up getting divorced with twins. Well, I have twins
Oh.
and I am also divorced. So I am a part of that statistic.
Well,
So absolutely.
well, Abigail, it's been so wonderful to talk with you. And is there anything else that you would like to be able to share as far as that maybe we didn't cover around this topic?
Oh my gosh. I mean, sure, there's plenty we could cover more, but I think you guys got so much. And I am super thankful to have been on and just have this conversation with you and talk with somebody like minded. It's always refreshing and I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. And just in closing, if you could talk to yourself several years ago, many years ago, because that person is going to be listening to this podcast. And if that person isn't quite ready to pick the phone up and ask for help and still feels really isolated, what would be, what would you say to her?
I didn't expect that. I'm like emotional even thinking about it. Um, I would say don't give up. I would say trust yourself. I would say reach out for help. Don't stop reaching out, that you will find your people and that there are people out there who care and you are worthy of being shown up for and trusting yourself.
Thank you.
Mm, yeah.
Well, I'll make sure that all of your links are in the episode notes and that maybe you could just share where people could find you
Yeah.
and if anybody's really resonating with your personality, which is amazing. I love chatting with you.
You. Yes, I love chatting with you. Yeah, you could find me pretty much on any platform, Facebook, Instagram, at Abigail Levisi. So my last name is Luvisi. So that's, and then I have a podcast as well. It's called Judgment Free Zone. So come check it out. I don't have season 2 up yet, but it will be coming. And yeah, come find me. I'd love to have you a part of the community.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for being
Yeah.
here.
Thank you so much too. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. If you've enjoyed this podcast, make sure to hit that follow or subscribe button and share it with a friend. It helps bring this content out to more people that need to hear it the most. And as always, may you be the change you want to see in the world.